Hello, my name is Nicole, and thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Today, we're talking about parental evil. Parental evil. Parents who just have the type of hearts that are filled with evil. Whether they know it or not, they are children of darkness with these dark sides, okay? These evil places within their hearts. God knows. Those who are very close to these individuals know, children, right? Sons, daughters, whether young or old. They know the evil that is within these individuals. But the psychologist can be deceived. The doctor can be deceived. Extended relatives, family members from years ago that suddenly show up and everything looks sweet and nice, they can be deceived. Friends, people who I've known her for 10, 15, 20 plus years. She's a good person. She's this and she's that. They can be deceived. This parental evil is the type of evil where it shows up when one is dealing with the child, but it doesn't show up anywhere else. Okay? It's something about the child that triggers the evil. The reason why for some individuals it doesn't show up elsewhere is because they're not around people long enough for the evil to manifest itself. So you don't get to see the outrage. You don't get to see the dark side because that parent hasn't been around you for that long, just enough to get whatever he or she needs to accomplish, and then they're gone, you see. But the child or children are around that parent often. And they get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, but more so the ugly when one is evil. Okay? The parent could literally smile at the child in front of an audience. And then when the audience goes away, the smile goes away. And they are back to being their evil selves with their son, with their daughter. Some of you all, even though you are well past your teenage years, well past your toddler years, you do recall those times where you knew something wasn't quite right with mom, with dad. You knew that there was a dark side to them that was quite disturbing. And if you were to cross that line with them, you were going to experience a violent reaction from them. Whatever that line was, it could have been something as simple as don't touch this and don't eat that and ask me before you go over here. And then you violated that rule or rules and they went off the deep end. The problem is that nobody was around when it happened, so they don't believe you. Okay. If you were to tell all of what took place, they wouldn't believe you. They would say that, no, you're an exaggerator, you're a liar, you make things up. The parent who's guilty will tell the other parent as well as other relatives, well, you know how my child can be, she always had some weird ways about her. You know how my son is. Oh Lord, he been in and out of jail. You can't believe him. But you see, somebody who's discerning, they will take that person who's been the victim of abuse seriously, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, but either way, whatever the abuse was that took place, someone who God has anointed and appointed to pay close attention to someone's behavioral patterns and to find out the truth, they will know that, no, there was no exaggeration. There was no lying. That person is not a nut job, even though the parent is saying all sorts of negative things about son or daughter because they've been exposed. That's usually why they come up with all these stories. The truth is the truth. The son or daughter has exposed that parent and it makes them angry. So to protect one's reputation, let me come up with something that will make it appear like it's the child's fault. So the child's grades are slipping. It's the child's fault. It's some premature, let's say, some premature decision making on the child's part, and the parent will claim they didn't have anything to do with it. Okay, rather than wait, let's say, for something to take place, the child decides to go ahead and get some things done, and those things end up causing all sorts of disaster. And so now the child says, well, or the parent, I should say, says, well, I don't know why he or she would do that. Okay, maybe was it something that you said, something that you did, what have you? Nope, we're not going to discuss me. We're just going to look at the fact that the child prematurely acted, did some things, was not responsible, did not ask me, blah, 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 right? So blame the child. You got those parents who will deny that there's just absolutely nothing wrong in the household. Nope, I'm good. Everything's great. John E. Jane, they're beautiful. I don't have any problems with my children. Okay. Then check up with them some weeks later. It's still the same thing, even though Johnny got in trouble, Jane got in trouble, lots of drama all across the board. As the child becomes an adult, the parent will say, look, he or she's an adult. She or he can make their own decisions. But if that parent is still in the ear of that adult son or daughter and still influencing them in some way, how can you say that, well, son or daughter can make his or her own decisions when you may be that parent that's controlling every aspect of his or her life through all of your suggestions, your tips, your sudden showing up at the doorstep, your luring them in with gifts and money. Don't say that you didn't have any type of responsibility in something that they may have said, may have done, in a divorce that took place, in some division that took place with the in-laws. Don't say that if you know you've been doing negative things, saying negative things, influencing that child in one direction or another. Son, daughter, But we have those parents that they have an evil within them that will motivate them to cause all sorts of destruction within the household, will cause all sorts of division between family members and friends and so forth. There is an evil within that wants his or her selfish needs met. There's also an evil within that says that I'm always right, even though you're wrong. Mom tries to persuade dad into doing something that is good, that's righteous, that's wonderful, but dad refuses to do it because mom suggested it, and besides, I think she's controlling, you see. So the child witnesses this sort of behavior, does the same thing with his or her partner, and when the parent is called out on the relationship that he or she exposed their son or daughter to over the years, they say, no, that's not how we were. So you mean to tell me that your child never seen any of this sort of thing take place in the household that is currently playing out in their own household? Oh, no, we got along just beautifully. Meanwhile, on the way home from the, doctor's office or psychologist's office or, the pastor's office, they're arguing like cats and dogs. You see? Evil is going to protect evil. Let me say that again. Evil is going to protect evil. And in parental evil, the parents who are evil toward one another, but then they have this so-called common foe with their son or daughter, they're going to protect one another, even though they may not like each other, they may not really get along, or maybe they do get along, but they're going to protect one another. I got your back, you got my back. This is the problem. This is the scapegoat child. This is the child that always gave us grief. Maybe that was the child that was always exposing those parents on their evil ways. That's why the child became the enemy. Okay, we got some of those children who they don't mind saying, no, I'm not going to tell the lie. And if you go back down memory lane, that child 9 times out of 10 was the one that did not want to go along with the programming. The programming said, you tell a lie, say that I'm not here, tell this one and that one. Whatever I tell you to say, even if it is not completely accurate or truthful, but this is how we're going to do things. So you teach the child to so-called be loyal to you, even with deceit, even with lies, even with exaggerations, cover-ups, denial, blame, what have you. Then when the child turns on you, or the child may not exhibit those sorts of things those character traits that you wanted him or her to have. Now she's a scapegoat. She's evil. She's ugly. She's dark. She's disturbed. She's troubled. She's crazy. Okay. I'm talking to some folks because for too long you sat there and you've denied everything that was wrong with you, and everybody else was the issue. Okay. Everybody else was the problem, even though there was some personality disorders going on. 1 minute you're okay and all right. Next minute you're freaking out. You have an attitude and you want everybody to leave you alone. That's a personality disorder. Come on. You got some parents who they are very impatient, very irritable over the slightest thing. They got their share of personality disorders. You got some parents who have been abused and now have turned around and now they are the abusers, and they don't look at isolation, gaslighting, silent treatment, ignoring as being a problem. Okay. The crazy making type of stuff where you're saying that, no, this isn't my issue. I don't know what you're talking about. And meanwhile, the evidence and proof is right there. It goes on in these families. Okay. It goes on. The parents, though, the reason why this particular message is significant to some of these people who listen, the parents are going to be judged just like everybody else. Okay. And I know that sometimes parents, because of the holiday seasons and so forth, they consider themselves to be like mini gods because they're celebrated, because people go around and say Happy Mother's Day, Happy Father's Day, or what have you. They think that they're untouchable. They think that the one true God, is like the person or group of people who, just admires you and, gives you so many compliments and all that. God is not like that. God is not like that. God exposes you on your faults. Even if you don't believe that you have faults, God will expose you. He will even tell you that just the other day you said this, you did this, and you know that it was incorrect. It wasn't right. And you should have never brought that child into that conversation, or you should have never brought that child into the room, or, you should have been more guarded about what you put in front of the grandchildren or what have you. He will show you. See, the problem with many individuals is that they don't want to be shown what is wrong with them. Okay. That's why they stay away from the psychologist and the psychiatrist. Okay. They rather bring somebody else to the meeting. They rather bring somebody else over there to get checked out, but just don't check me out. Okay. This is disheartening because so many people could be healed if they would just simply give over their burdens over to the one true God, and also, go after the necessary resources to help them in whatever they're dealing with. So if you know that something's not quite in your mindset, it would make sense to get the necessary help, to have somebody look at you from the outside looking in and say, okay, I see why this is going on, or why this ongoing issue is happening with your child, because your child is seeing you do this, that, and the other. With adult sons and daughters, they are looking a little bit more closer at mom and dad beyond the words. Okay. See, when you're little, you pretty much take whatever they say at face value. But when you get older, you start looking at your parents in a whole new different light. And then you say, now I see why they couldn't get along with so and so. Now I see why they tended to isolate themselves. Now I see why they tend to be impatient and bitter. Now I see why the relationship isn't really as great as they claim. You see, some of you are awakened to the truth, whether the truth hit you in the face with something that the parents said, or the truth hit you in the face based on your own observations or what people told you, but you see it for what it is. And you have made a strategic effort not to walk in your parents' shoes, even though they would love for you to be just like them. But who wants to be just like dysfunction? I know I don't. If I see something that is wrong with anyone, doesn't matter whether it's a parent or not. If I see something that's wrong with someone, I am going to be guarded. I'm going to be distant. I'm not going to go along with whatever they say just because they have a title. I'm not going to follow in the ways of whoever on whatever given day just because it sounds okay. It sounds all right. Let me take this through God's tests. God said, test the spirits. Let's start testing the spirits. Who is, in fact, working within and around this person? Based on a conversation that I'm hearing selfishness, or I'm hearing some lying, or I'm hearing some denying and some blaming. I'm listening for that sort of thing, because if you can talk like that about your son or your daughter, you probably sooner or later going to do that to me. Come on now, somebody. You know what I'm talking about. If you can be so nasty and so just judgmental and so just evil about your own sons and daughters. It's just a matter of time that you just might be that way. And I have come across individuals who have befriended, and these are senior citizens, befriended one another, but talked badly about the sons and daughters. And then lo and behold, if later on the two who were running their mouths, ended up having their falling out with each other. You see? Come on. So some of you all, you are listening and you're saying, wow, she got a lot of issues with her son, or she got a lot of issues with her daughter, or every now and again I hear something that doesn't sit right in my spirit. It's only a matter of time that that's going to come around on you. Those issues, those irritations, those things, listen out for them that they talk about concerning how they, react or respond to their children. They just may do that to you. If she's ignoring, using silent treatment, power and control, with the sons and daughters, sooner or later, she gonna come around and do it with you, that so-called friend of yours. Okay. That's why it doesn't pay to sit back and talk too negative and too crazy about what all your children said and did to you. Okay. Because if your children are trying to do what's right, they're going to the church, or they're praying, or they're fasting, or they're taking care of their responsibilities, or off of drugs and alcohol or whatever, and that they're doing what's right, but yet you still bad mouthing as a parent, sooner or later, all that negativity is going to come back on you, because the devil says, I got a foothold in this person's life because she got a lot of negative, or he got a lot of negative that, they're spouting off about their sons and daughters. But it's only a matter of time before the demonic is going to expose you, because he's going to allow the evil, or I should say even God himself is going to allow the evil to show up and show out. You see, it goes back to that reaping season. You reap what you sow. Okay. So if you sow in goodness and mercy and kindness and righteousness, and you're speaking positive over your children, good things can happen. But if you're about that fire, about that fight, about the warfare, about what you're not going to put up with, what you're not going to tolerate in your child and that child and everybody else's child, and it's a bunch of stuff being said that isn't altogether true, it's only a matter of time that somebody's going to have a lot of negative things to say about you. Sometimes it's not the family members and friends. It's the stranger on the street. It's the person over there at the store. It's the, individual who's at the bus stop. And next thing you know, there's all sorts of negative stuff that shows up, and you say, why me? Well, consider all of the stuff that you put out there, parent. The parental evil is around. I know that some people don't want to believe that parents can be destructive, can, be used by the enemy to work all sorts of negativity, but it's happening over and over again. We see this when parents eventually kill kids, or when they steal money from them. We see this when parents will go off in front of everybody, embarrass the child at a store, in a parking lot, at a restaurant. We see this when we're listening, or we hear this when we're talking to parents and they're bad mouthing and saying all sorts of negative about the child, as if they had no type of influence, no type of input, never ever did anything wrong to the child for the child to turn around and be disrespectful. There is an evil that is lurking within some of these parents. And this is why the Lord is allowing the separation and the distance, because for some people, no matter what they're told concerning, how they could be better, how they could draw their children near, how they could, just overall walk the righteous path, no matter what they're told, they refuse to do the right thing. They still want to point the finger at my no good child, my no good this and whatever else, instead of looking at what caused your child to do what he or she has done. Some folks, they have a short memory on what all they said and what all they did. So they will pretend as if they just don't remember. I don't remember. I don't recall. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why my child doesn't say this, or doesn't do this, or doesn't come around, or whatever. I don't know. But the truth is that if one really sat down and thought about some things, or even went to the Lord and said, what happened? Why are things going down in the way that they're going down? Even when the truth would hit them right between the eyes, they would bury that truth, because of course they don't want other people to know that they know. So it's better just to run around and say, I don't know why my child is behaving this way. Okay. The parental evil is, number one, just summarizing, the parental evil will be exposed sooner or later, whether it is between mother and son, father and daughter, vice versa, what have you. It will be exposed. Third parties may expose it, depending on what type of counseling people choose to partake in. Sometimes it is exposed through drug addiction, alcohol addiction. The family's ashamed. Oh, I can't believe it. I don't know what came over my son, my daughter. Now he or she's a criminal and all this other stuff. Once again, not taking full responsibility for some of the things that took place growing up in the household. Number two is the parental evil shows up in the conversation that the parent has with the teacher, with the best friend, with the relatives. And if the relatives are not, as well as others, if they are not discerning, if they're not reading between the lines, picking up on some of what they're saying, they will assume that everything is okay and all right with the parent who's giving the information, and that, oh, that terrible, bad child, you see. You're not to be that way. You're not to be so one-sided listening to people. You are to open up your mindset to all sides of the story, not just what you want to go along with just because it sounds okay and all right. Remember, we're dealing with people in this world, many of them who have all sorts of personality disorders, and they do not want to be exposed on them. So it's better to point the finger at that person over there and their mindset than to, of course, be vulnerable, be open with you about what's really going on with them, that parent, right? So this is why you also talk to the children, whether they're adult sons and daughters or young people, and you ask questions like, how are you doing? There are some things that have been brought to my attention. I wonder if we could talk. It seems that, and then you can fill in a blank, right? Get a dialogue going. If you think that a child is depressed, suicidal, or even a grown adult son or daughter is running ragged behind a parent, have that conversation and you'll find out some things that, wow, I didn't know all of that was going on. Now I see why so-and-so is behaving in the way that he or she is behaving. And then another thing about this parental evil is that it has to be casted out. Okay. It has to be casted out, from a deliverance, ministry of sorts. That means that, laying on of hands, none of this going to the church and just sitting down in the pew and listening. No, the parental evil that keeps showing up with so many of these different parents is demonic. So therefore, it needs to be dealt with from a spiritual perspective as well. Okay. As well as a spiritual response, where there are those individuals that surround that parent and lay hands and pray the demonic out. Okay. Then, of course, some of this has to be medicated. Okay. We got, once again, personality disorders, psychological issues with some people, untreated, were victims of abuse, saw abuse growing up. And there's personalities of all sorts floating around. You don't know if you're dealing with, Sweet Jane or crazy, Creole. You just don't know. Okay. So if this is the case, it's safe to say that somebody needs some treatment. So this is, I know, one of those messages that is not going to sit so well with some individuals because, you recognize something that's very disturbing about the parent, but yet you're still around him or her, you still want to do for them and all that. You're holding on to the scriptures about honoring, one's parent and, all of that. But at the end of the day, when the toxic stuff is rubbing off on you and you're finding yourself, beating your head up against the wall behind a parent, it's safe to say that something's wrong. Okay. Something's very wrong. And even if you have offered to provide resources or to help that parent and they still want to act as if they're not the problem, but it's your sister or your brother or whoever. Okay. You're going to have to protect your sanity because some of these people will drive you mad. Okay. They will drive you mad. So that is why they have to paint the picture that everybody else is evil and they are okay and all right. Okay. When we know that that is not the truth. So Thank you, as always, for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen. You've been listening to YouTube NM Enterprise 7. Subscribe today. Also, if you would like to give, you are welcome to do just that. There are links in the description box. I do recommend Tell Me Mother You're Sorry if you're dealing with a controlling, manipulative, very slick type of mother who appears to be very sweet and nice out there in the public, and then, just crazy making behind closed doors. And then, of course, I also recommend Say Goodbye to Dad for those who are trying to chase after a father who simply does not have the capacity within his being to connect with you and is not interested in the least bit. Why chase after the wind, right? There's also those father-in-laws and spiritual fathers and others that I talk about in that book. Same thing with Tell Me Mother You're Sorry. I talk about the spiritual mothers, the stepmothers in that book as well. So it's not just about biological parents that are doing some things. We've got some folks who may have been in our lives for many years, and we consider them to be patriarchs and matriarchs, and they turned out to be nothing more than problems. Okay. So thank you as always, once again, for your support. To God be the glory. Blessings to you.